Rivers belong where they can ramble. Eagles belong where they can fly. I've got to be where my spirit can run free. Gotta find my corner of the sky. So many men seem destined to settle for something small, but I won't rest until I know I'll have it all. So don't ask where I'm going, just listen when I'm gone. And far away, you'll hear me singing softly to the dawn. Rivers belong where they can ramble. Eagles belong where they can fly. I've got to be where my spirit can run free. Gotta find my corner of the sky.
Wow. Thank you. That's some good energy there. Good morning, beautiful souls of all souls. You have absolutely no idea how happy I am to be here. I would like to tell you the story of how I got here to All Souls Tulsa, but this story goes all the way back to Cuba in the 1970s, and it begins with me falling in love with a hurricane. I was 4 years old. Back then, I lived with my mother and 2 older sisters in an illegal settlement of unpaved streets and makeshift homes. Our house wasn't even a house. It was more like a hut made out of wood. We didn't have indoor plumbing, air conditioning, or even proper flooring. We had dirt floors. I remember this clearly because my family couldn't afford shoes for me, so I went barefoot for years. And those are the first memories I have of my feet against the warm earth of the Caribbean ground. One particular time for days, there was this buzz in the neighborhood because a hurricane was coming. I loved the excitement before a storm because everyone was out talking to everyone else. The day of the storm, because the howling and the whistling of the winds were so loud, I could barely hear the voices of my mother and sisters as they talked inside the house. They were busy placing socks filled with sand under the doors to keep the water from coming in. And I decided to look outside through a crack on the wall, and I fell on my knees because of what I saw. There was something about the force of those winds that was so powerful that it left me without words. There was something so majestic, so beautiful, so transcendent in the life force of the hurricane that I was spellbound. It was my first lesson in our 7th principle, the interdependent web of all existence. The buzzing that storm created in the neighborhood for days, and the feelings it created inside of me made me realize that I was not separate from it. I knew that the same life force that ran through my veins ran through the hurricane. It was also my first religious experience, except I wasn't religious at all. Religion had been forbidden in Cuba in 1959 when Castro came to power. What I didn't know then, it is what seminary had taught me, that there is a term for people like me who hunger for connection, for something greater than ourselves, and find that in nature, in the vast expansiveness of this universe, and in the miracle that is life itself. The term is religious naturalism. I am a religious naturalist, and I suspect many of us here are too. A few years later, when I was 10 years old, I had to leave home and went to a middle school where I worked in the fields in the mornings and had classes in the afternoon. I often fainted there from malnutrition and because the heat was just too much for a 10-year-old. When I think about how I survived those years of adolescence, working in the fields, being away from my mother and my sisters and my family, I think about the friends I made, how close we were. In the mornings, as we traveled from the dorm rooms to the fields in the back of a truck, we would huddle together because the wind was so chilly. And in the afternoons, returning to school in the back of the same truck, it was different. Now we would sing songs and we would braid one another's hair, or we would softly peel the dry skin off of our backs because we were always sunburnt. Since I didn't grow up with religion, I didn't even know what God was. I used to wonder, what is that thing that people call God in the American movies? But I did know what was sacred. The community, the bonds, that was sacred. And even small things like eating a juicy, ripe mango, and as the juice will drip down my arms, that was sacred. That delight was my religion. My experiences of awe of the sacred were never intellectual. They were more richer and more, if I might say, delicious. I learned early on that those moments of delight, of beauty, of awe, of grace can sustain us through the hardest things in life. Can you believe I didn't even actually enter a church building until I was in college? In the 1990s, on a summer afternoon, I found myself walking in circles around the only church in town, which was built in the 1700s. I was 18 years old then, and I was trying to gather the courage to go into that church. Fidel Castro, when he came to power in 1959, the government declared war on religion. I had seen with my own eyes how Christians and Jews were marginalized and ridiculed in public. Entering that church would be a risk for me. I worry, what if somebody sees me going in? What if I'm not allowed in there? What if they call the police? What if I'm not dressed properly? I finally opened the massive doors, which led me into a world I had never experienced. The scent of incense, dampness, all wood, the coolness of the air, the echoing acoustics, the light entering the high windows, the openness of the space, the symmetry of the architecture. When I went back on Sunday morning, I found a vibrant community, and it was exactly what I needed in order to deal with the hunger and the traumas of my day-to-day life in Cuba. Because there was more. My stepfather was against the Cuban government, and the whole family was being threatened by the police. Once they came to our house at night when we were asleep, and they forced us out into the streets to search the house. When they left, we couldn't go back to sleep. They had turned everything upside down. After years like that of similar episodes, my family made the difficult decision to migrate to the United States as political refugees It was April 4th, 1995, and I was 21 years old then. We left only with the clothes we were wearing and a small backpack with photos and documents. That's all. We had never flown in an airplane. We had never left the island before. We had no idea what was waiting for us. At the airport in Miami, they told us we were going to North Carolina, and that when we arrived there, if no one was waiting for us, to call a number in New York. They said it was all in English, and we say we only speak Spanish, but we were on our own. On the flight from to Greensboro, North Carolina, we wondered if we would have to spend the night on the streets, if there was no one waiting for us, if we couldn't figure out how to operate a public phone, or if we couldn't find a quarter, if we couldn't understand the people in New York, we would definitely have to spend the night on the streets. But we were hopeful. We had to believe. Being an asylum seeker means trusting in the goodness of people to open their hearts, to open their homes, their countries, to give us refuge, sanctuary. We had to trust. When we finally arrived at the terminal, there were dozens of people with signs that said, "Bienvenidos." And I remember looking behind me to see which celebrity were in that plane. But they were there for us. Dozens of people, kind, compassionate people, who would give us food and clothing and furniture, who would give us rides and advice on how to go on in this country. We had no idea how to do so. I will never forget their kindness. Now, almost immediately, I began looking for a religious home. And whoa, you had so many options. I only had one in my town. I visited Buddhist sanghas and Jewish temples, and I searched on mountaintops and everywhere. It took me a decade to find Unitarian Universalism, a place where they welcome my weird theology of being in love with hurricanes and people and clouds. And while I gained a spiritual home, I also lost a part of myself in the process, because I couldn't be this excited Cuban woman there at that church. When the music played, I couldn't sway like my body wanted to. And when the ministers talked, I couldn't go like, preach. And after a sermon, I couldn't clap. We did this. The term we now know is called code switching. I acted one way at church, and I acted my normal way everywhere else. I was already in seminary and had come to peace with the idea that my Cuban family would never join me in the UU world. The culture wasn't diverse enough for them. I had made sacrifices assimilating to the culture that had hurt my spirituality, and I didn't want that for my family. And then I came here last October. And during the contemporary service, I found myself in tears. I could dance, I could express myself, I could be myself. Not only I could be myself, but that self was celebrated here. Yes, I was in tears, literally realizing it is possible, after all, to have a congregation where my family could come and feel at home, where I could feel at home. So I want to thank you for creating such a place. I know the journey hasn't been easy at all. I know. But you have done it. I couldn't even dream of a place like this, but here you are. And this is why last October, when I came here, I called my husband back in North Carolina, where we had lived for 25 years, and I say, honey, we are moving to Tulsa. And he's like, okay. I hope you know you make a tremendous difference in the life of people. That little girl who fell in love with a hurricane at age 4 grew up and fell in love with the force of nature that is All Souls. You are a force of nature, a force of love to be reckoned with. I am thrilled to be here, and I can't wait to get to know each of you better, to break bread with you, to dance, and to savor, and to serve, and to do this sacred work of love beyond belief, here and in the community. Thank you.
You're visiting with us online today. We love connecting with people all across the country and around the world, sharing our powerful message of love beyond belief.
There's something new happening here. You can now join All Souls as a virtual member. Our virtual membership is designed for friends who live outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and who want to engage with All Souls in a meaningful way.
You can be part of an expanding family, a global family really, wherever you are. If you live in Oklahoma,
Ohio,
or Orange County, California,
Canada,
or Cameroon. By becoming a virtual member, you'll be able to deepen your connections with members and friends here in Tulsa and with members wherever you are.
Each week, you'll receive special All Souls content tailored for you, our virtual members. Virtual members have access to pastoral care, to personal prayers, and also receive invitations to exclusive web events.
You can learn more, and if you're ready, you can become a virtual member today by visiting allsoulschurch.org/virtual membership.
We're grateful our ministries are having a positive impact on your life, and we want to share the good news of love beyond belief with more and more people. So no matter what, we need your support to keep this ministry growing and thriving, so please consider making a gift today. You can do so by texting
LOVEBB for Love Beyond Belief to 73256, or simply visit our website. You are a blessing in our lives. May you be blessed.
And be a blessing.